Welcome to the Jon Gaunt Show. It's another one of my set pieces. Jon Gaunt meets interesting people, or people who interest me at least. And today it's somebody you're quite familiar, I think, with. I've had him on my shows on all of the stations I've worked on. He's a terrorism and security expert. His name is Mike Yardley, and I'm delighted to say he joins me now. Hello, Mike.
Hi, John. Well, an awful lot of life has flown under the, gone under the bridge since we last spoke. So it's great to talk to you. Really good. I hope this will go to some interesting places.
Yeah, a lot of life and nearly a bit of death as well. Right, Let's crack on straight away. Are we safer now? You're an international terror and security expert. Are we safer now than 7/7 20 years ago? Tell me your views.
Yeah, I think the answer's complex. And you look back, I was going through some of my own articles the other day, and I noticed I was writing op-eds in the Times after the Brighton bomb, which is 84.
Yeah.
And then we had this, we went through the sort of era of big terrorism.
Yeah.
And that's quite interesting of itself, and we could come back to that. But then, 20-year anniversary of the London bombings. Are we safer now? Well, I think the intelligence is better developed. That's certainly true. I think we've got a line in to a lot of these groups and what they're thinking. They're extremely vulnerable to our developed systems, which is good news. But of course, there's new problems as well. There was also a very curious lack of terrorism during the COVID crisis, during lockdown. Perhaps things were happening, but we didn't hear of them much. But you have to ask yourself now, how secure can we be when we've got tens of thousands of people coming through on small boats, many of them of military age? I mean, if you were one of our enemies, our strategic enemies, you'd been mad not to introduce your assets, your agents, your special forces type people who would only be activated in the event of war. They must have done that. They'd be foolish not to.
Let me ask you that direct question then. Do you believe terror cells or terrorists are getting in via the small boats at Dover? There was a story that the Iranians who wanted to bomb the Israeli embassy here in Britain, that's how they got in. But do you think that could be the tip of a rather large iceberg?
I think it's almost certainly happened. I think it's only a question of degree. You would be mad if you were looking at this from a perspective of our strategic enemies, from their intelligence services and similar. You're thinking, well, Britain's open. This is the time we should be putting people in. So they must have done that. But to what extent, who knows? I think we are very vulnerable, though, John. I think we're probably much more vulnerable than we realize. We
started off by talking about 7/7, but of course, everyone now basically agrees it's not going to be a terror spectacular, the next attack. But people now talk about lone wolves. I don't buy it. I think they are coming in on the boats, and I think it's organised. Am I probably right?
I think you are probably right. And it's not just a question of physical terrorism now either. I mean, we've got lots of vulnerable infrastructure. You've got all the stuff that happens online now, which could probably bring us to our knees very quickly as well. And I am concerned about young men of military age. And this is a very sensitive subject. And I will start this by saying I've got a lot of immigrant friends. And I think it's tough for immigrants sometimes now as well, because they may be unfairly labeled or singled out. And immigrants brought a lot to Britain and bring a lot to Britain. We need some controlled immigration. What we don't need is lots of people who are criminals at home or working for the interests of things that would really quite scare us coming into the country. And that almost certainly is happening. And what could you do with that? I mean, imagine what a stick of SAS guys could do around this country if they wanted to. If you had half a dozen rogue sticks of SAS or special forces or similar, well, our enemies could probably do exactly that. And I have to say this, and this is a very controversial thing to say, but there was a hotel near us which was taking a lot of asylum seekers. And I walked past it one day and I was very surprised because these were all young guys of military age. So we're saying 20 to 30, 6 foot, looked fit, muscled up. And I was watching them walking on the pavement and I was very surprised because there were some of them walking in 4s and I think one group in 6s. They were walking in step. And I looked at these guys.
As if they were military, you mean?
Well, I looked at them and from an old soldier's perspective, I thought these guys have had some sort of military training somewhere. They were just falling into that. And that does worry me, because whatever else, we know that there's loads of people coming in of military age. And, it's mainly young men. It's mainly men in this category. We've all seen them. That is worrying. And that does present a potential threat.
And there are 25,000. We know that for a fact. I keep saying, I'd like to get Keir Starmer in a room and say, see that boat there, Sir Keir? You've told us no more than 80 can be in it. And your Home Secretary is going to prosecute people if there's more than 80, because overcrowding is a terrible thing. But can you tell me the names of any of the 80? Can you tell me their identity? Can you tell me where they've come from? Because they've all chucked their passports overboard. The truth is, our Prime Minister, our spooks, could not tell us that. That, me, as an ordinary fella, Mike, scares the pants off me. We are letting in people, and I'm not saying all 25,000 illegal immigrants are terrorists or rapists or anything like that.
Obviously, they're not.
But, obviously. But what they are is illegal. They are illegal. They broke into our country. We've allowed them in. How do we stop it? You're a man of military age. I keep saying, put the troops on the beach at Dover. I'm partly almost saying now put them on the beach at Calais, but put them on at Dover, put the Navy in the Channel. Can we stop this? And is it an invasion? Over to you.
Yeah, I'll just come back to that in a moment. Let me just say one other thing, of course. It's not just a question of the risk of terrorism. It's not just the question of the risk of spying. That's there. It's also the criminal risk, because we know some of the gangs, serious organized crime are bringing their people into. And that power base is growing in our country. And there are some nationalities which are overrepresented in this. And again, it's a very sensitive subject. But there are certainly some peoples, Afghans and Albanians might come to mind, Iranians, who do seem to feature more than they should in crime.
And also they feature in sexual crime as well. And again, it's difficult to talk about because we're not saying that every Afghan male, and I know you know about Afghanistan well, but perhaps we can go on to that.
I have some Afghan friends,
Right, but we're not saying every Afghan is somebody who would attack women, but they do come very high in that sordid league table of sexual crimes. So we have to be on guard. And we've got the two Afghan suspects in Nuneaton, and Warwickshire Police try to cover that up.
Indeed. But I think the question that's on everybody's mind is, why aren't the government actually physically stopping the boats? Why isn't the political will there? Because there's a lot of guff. We get told a lot of things. We see that clip of the French policeman slashing the rubber dinghy again and again and again. But the fact of the matter is they're not stopping these boats coming over. And that means there is not really the political will to do it. Now, let's move
on that. Hold on a second. As an ex-military man, how could you stop people getting in? How do we control our borders? There's a channel there, but how do we stop the boats, smash the gangs? Tell me, as a military man, put the politics to one side.
Well, it depends how hard you want to be, doesn't it? But, you can go there with a patrol boat, say stop. If they don't stop, you fire across their bows, you give them a warning and say you will actually blow them out of the water if they continue. That is the ultimate sanction. But before we go to that sort of really heavy stuff, and there are other probably much better alternatives, but they're very difficult to do if you don't have your immediate allies on hand. I mean, the French don't really seem to want to stop this. We've given them vast amounts of money to improve whatever they're doing, and it's not working. No. I mean, I think the key point is, and this is what is making everybody I know anyway, rather angry. They just keep coming. Whatever political guff we're fed, the boats keep coming. And this has other consequences as well. Go around any town in Britain, go to any city. Services can't cope. There are not enough GPs. There's not enough school places. There's certainly not enough housing. This is having major economic consequences as well. It's also having a political consequence, because I think if you have, for example, a Labour government that wants to get re-elected and they're lowering the voting age to 16 and there's 1 million migrants coming in a year, that is going to play to Labour and could be a reason why it might not be automatic that reform would come into power next. That worries me too.
So it's a kind of gerrymandering. It's a kind of gerrymandering then, is it?
Yes, I think it is. Because just think of it. I mean, it's going to have a massive effect. 16-year-olds voting, 1 million migrants a year, most of whom would be inclined probably to vote Labour if they had a vote.
Okay, let's talk about move, as you said, move on from the ultimate sanction, which is to blow them out of the water. How do we stop the come on factor? And I now see many other people are beginning to say we need secure detention centres. They should not be in hotels. They should be in ex-military establishments behind barbed wire, not allowed out in the day to walk down the street. As you said, you've seen them walking in almost military fashion. Why aren't we doing that? Why are we putting them in 3 and 4-star hotels? And you, as an ex-military man, it must break your heart to see some of your ex-guys on the street screaming and shouting with PTSD, etc., and they haven't got anywhere to live.
Well, you know, that is a very real concern when you see vets, and I have seen them, and indeed I've helped them on occasion, who are languishing on the pavement in a sleeping bag or similar, and they don't seem to get anything really from the system. They seem completely screwed, and the system has not honoured them, has not honoured what they've given, and I think that is a terrible thing. And we've actually got quite a big camp not very far away at Wethersfield. And that's caused quite a few local problems as well, with people coming into some of the shops there and not really understanding how we do things in the UK. That sort of stuff.
Polite way of putting it.
I'm being very polite, but it is creating real tension.
Sure.
And the problem is that the people feel they can't express those tensions anymore. No. And let's be frank, some people are foolish. They're angry. They explode in rage. That's not a good thing either. But that's happening partly. There are some people who are obviously troublemakers, but it's happening because government doesn't appear to be listening. And a lot of people have the feeling that government is out of touch with what they want, what they feel. Mr. Starmer is historically unpopular. I think he's even more unpopular than Mr. Blair now. But that, again, is another subject. People don't feel that government represents them very well. And this particular issue is the issue at the moment because everybody wants these boats to stop, and yet they keep coming.
Okay, I want to go on to that in a moment and the government and the way the government are treating us. I got a very alarming letter today from a London cabbie where TfL, Transport for London, and the mayor are basically saying, you watch what you're saying on social media. I think they've overstepped the mark. I think it's going to turn into a big story. It's an absolute disgrace, and it's an attack on freedom of speech, which I want to go on to.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about freedom of speech.
Yeah, because what is going on? I want to drag you back first, though, to the hotels. You're a military man. I keep saying, well, why can't we put them in tents that the army supply? When we go and look after Pakistan or Afghanistan, where there's been a natural tragedy or earthquake, whatever, our boys go in and our girls and build camps with tents, etc. I'm not talking about treating these people badly, but couldn't we do that? Wouldn't that also then disincentivize people to come? But the moment they think they're going to stay in a Hilton, and they are Hilton, okay, the bottom of the line Hiltons, but they're still Hiltons, that's synonymous with luxury. Well, come on. We're giving them a come on.
Yeah, I think we are. And I think that we're giving them a come on. I think you definitely don't want to be putting them up in hotels. You want to be putting them up in special facilities. Where you place those special facilities, you could place them on mainland Britain. You could place them on some of our islands, potentially, or you could have them abroad. I never thought the Rwanda thing was ever going to take off. So I think that probably the best solution are specialist facilities that don't look particularly attractive, because you don't want people to see, guys living in hotels and apparently living it up, certainly compared to what they had back home, because that is just a positive motivation for them to come here.
Not just back home, better than what they've got in Calais before they get into the rubber dinghy. I mean, let's look at President Trump. He's reduced illegal migration by 95% on his southern border by being harsh. He's even got his now, what's he calling it, alligator Alcatraz, which is obviously Trumpian and a bit over the top. But basically he's saying, if you try to break into our country, you're not going to have a nice time of it. That's what we've got to do, isn't it?
Yeah, it's so difficult, because I think you must always retain an element of compassion. You must also recognize that some of these people are coming here because of our own failed foreign policy. That is another point. But you can't make it look like a soft option. And you can't be putting them up in 3-star or whatever it is hotels. That is just a disaster. It's got to look like it's not worthwhile them coming here, because they're going to go to some, concrete block where they'll get fed and they'll be treated humanely, but it really will not be a place you'd want to be in.
And also, we've got this situation at the moment where they're sneaking them into hotels. You probably famously saw it the other night in Canary Wharf. They sneaked them in the morning, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, when no one was around. All of them had brand new tracksuits on because they'd been to Manston and got equipped. They all had envelopes and they all had brand new phones. I mean, this is just taking the piss, Mike. I'm sorry to use that.
Yeah, I think it is.
It's taking the piss out of you and me. I've had enough of it.
It's taking the proverbial out of the British taxpayer, but also, who is sponsoring who is pushing this? Who is paying for the organizations? Who's paying for all the stuff, the sort of publicity, the boats, it seems that there are some organizations that have been encouraging this mass migration. And also, by the by, the Russians. They want to see instability in Europe, in the States. This plays to their strategic agenda. So anything they might do to encourage this, and that might be stuff online, it might be all sorts of other things. That's all part of this game. But the problem is for you and I, sorry, but I know a lot of people will be thinking this. Increasingly, we don't really feel our country is our country anymore. And we don't feel our politicians are listening. We don't feel we have any power to change things. And a lot of people are getting not just fed up. I think a lot of people are looking to, if they could, they'd actually leave the country. They'd become immigrants.
And also, you have an absolute right to say that, because none of what you've just said is racist. But that's the other problem, even when it comes to the migrant hotels. Ordinary working class women in places like Epping protesting outside, Antifa come in, they're all masked up and balaclavaed up. Nobody on the right's allowed to do that. The police escort them in. Then the violence kicks off, and it's written about in the mainstream, lamestream media as if it's these women who are the enemy of the state. That's worrying as well. They're just ordinary women scared about their daughters and their children, and rightly so. And in Nuneaton, I live only 15 miles away from there. I'd be petrified if my girls were out on the street and allegedly one person was strangling her while the other one raped her. I'd be terrified. And I don't want to hear the left now saying, well, the most rapists in the country and paedophiles are white and English. Well, of course they are. But we're talking about, you don't import a problem on top of that, do you?
And peaceful protest is an absolutely vital part of our tradition.
Yeah.
We're losing freedom wherever you look. And I'm very concerned about the mainstream media as well. I think it's very controlled now. I think a lot of stories are not mentioned or hidden. We could go into that later if you want. I think people are deeply, deeply concerned by what's happening in the country. But I will also say I am not racist whatsoever. I actually, our culture has had so much from people that have come in from abroad, who've given so much to Britain. It might have been Huguenots, it might have been Jewish people, it might have been Poles, whatever. It might have been Jamaicans on London buses. But so many immigrants have given so much to Britain. It's not about being racist. It's about people taking the proverbial out of British culture, and our government seemingly being impotent to protect our borders properly.
I've said it seems as if they almost want a bogeyman, so that the government, of whichever political party, because let's not just blame this on Starmer and Labour. This has been going on for 14, 15, 20 odd years. It seems as if they want a bogeyman. All your problems are down to the immigrants or these people who are breaking in. We're trying our best to control it. So let's move on from there. Let's look at this head on. Who's doing this? Is this the World Economic Forum? I see these conspiracy theories. Is this about depopulation and repopulation? Do you buy into any of that, Mike?
Who are the World Economic Forum? Very weird. You'll own nothing, but you'll be happy. And then they sort of came back from that comment.
Yeah.
We had Prince Charles, as he then was supporting the Great Reset. A lot of people were scratching their heads and thinking, well, hold on, who are all these very, very, very rich people imposing their rather strange corporate but lefty liberal ideology upon us? And that is a very good question. I still ask people, do you know who the World Economic Forum are? And many people have never heard of them. And I said, well, you should Google them and have a look, because, they want to alter our society. And then you see all this stuff on ID cards. You see all this stuff on central bank digital currency. And make no mistake, by the by, sometimes politicians are saying that ID cards might help the situation with illegal migrants. No, ID cards, which coming out of the Tony Blair Institute, amongst other things, but ID cards are primarily about controlling the domestic population.
But
If
whether you
then-
like it or not, they're coming now because, as you say, it's coming from Blair. Starmer is reported to be looking into it this summer. He's gone from being against them as a civil rights lawyer to being in favour of them. And they are using the excuse it's a way of making sure we know who's in the country. But even I used to be in favour of ID cards, the old-fashioned type. You've got nothing to hide, you've got nothing to worry about. But even I've changed my position because I can see it's a control mechanism. And I now almost always think it's not about right versus left anymore. It's about us and them. I'm not quite sure who them is, though.
Yeah, the them with a capital T, the great non-generic enemy. But you've got everything to fear. You know this thing that people often say, well, if you've got nothing to hide, you've got nothing to fear.
Yeah.
Actually, what you've got to fear is the change of your society into some sort of Orwellian dystopia. Because as soon as they've got ID cards, the next thing that will come will be central bank digital currency. And once they've got central bank digital currency and ID cards and possibly a Chinese style social scoring system after that, there is no traditional British liberty. They have changed everything. Now, you asked earlier, where's the impetus coming? Where's the motive? Where's the money coming from? It seems that they're very powerful economic interests. For example, the sort of people that are in the World Economic Forum that want to see mass migration into countries like ours, because perhaps they think that will prevent a collapse of the financial system. The fact is that all the European countries are hopelessly indebted. So I think they may think that this influx of cheap labor might put off the evil day when the whole thing goes pop. But the financial system is in a colossal mess. And you've only got to look at the growth of things like crypto to see that. People are terrified that it's all just going to blow up in our faces soon, including when you talk to people in the city. I spoke to an economist quite recently, and he said, well, we're off the last page of the economic textbook now, so who knows what's going to happen.
And indeed, just bringing it down to the here and now, and we're recording this on Wednesday, of course, Rachel Reeves is facing this massive, it's doubled the alleged black hole that she inherited. It's now doubled. So she is up against it. I don't know about her crying in Parliament. She'll be in absolute hysterics when this shit hits the fan. So I think you're right. I'm kind of buying into where you're coming from on this. But also, so is that why they allow these people in? These people are getting in, and then not only are they sticking one finger up, they're taking the other hand off the handlebars of the bike that they've suddenly got, and they're delivering for Deliveroo. So they're picking up their food, 3 meals a day, nice hotel, and now they're making a grand in the black economy. And they're parking the bikes in the hotel.
Yeah, well, it does make us look like mugs, but you have to say, though, that nearly all these migrants that are coming over, there will be people who have dark motives, as we've discussed, who might be criminal or who might indeed be the assets of foreign intelligence agencies. But the vast majority of those people are just coming to Britain to better themselves, to better themselves economically. Because they think
on one level, I applaud the guys who end up getting a bike and working for Deliveroo. It's the Norman Tebbit kind of.
Yeah, I was going to say it's Norman Tebbitt's deal, and I miss him. I used to know him a bit. He was great. I loved Norman Tebbit. He was a great guy.
And
not the hard man that the TV portrayed him as.
And of course, sadly died just recently. However, it's all unsustainable. This. It's nice. I mean, I need my haircut. It's nice to get your haircut for peanuts. It's nice to get your car washed. But where's it going to end? Where's it going to end? Because where's all this money going? It's true what I'm saying.
Yeah, I do see what you're saying. I think that what we now need, people need to get back the feel that they're in charge of their local communities.
Yes.
I would like to see political devolution on a massive scale. I don't know if reform will get in the next election. In fact, I think it may surprise people. I still think that it's possible you could see alliances between other parties and whatever. But Britain desperately needs change. Now, when you used to talk to people, you and I talked to people, a lot of people didn't want to discuss this sort of stuff much.
No.
You know, when you were saying, oh, you know, aren't you worried? No, they pretended it wasn't happening. Now, when you talk to people, ordinary people, more and more of them do want to discuss it, are discussing it, and are really, forgive my French, pissed off about what's happening. They feel that their government is letting them down. They think the big central state isn't working for them. They do not feel that they're getting a very good deal in their own country. And that is, if you look at the history of revolution, by the by, I'll just nip this into the conversation. The revolution's not usually created by a disaffected proletariat in sort of Russian style.
No.
Most revolutions happen when the middle class have their and that's the working middle class. And that would be all people who are working wage owners, I would suggest today, have their aspirations raised, and then those aspirations are thwarted. That is when things really go wrong for societies. And we're sort of in that situation in Britain. And that's really worrying, because that sort of situation is bad for everyone. And government should bloody well listen. The establishment should realize that if it wants to survive, it better be more responsive and listening to ordinary people's concerns, which it isn't at the moment.
I don't want to go down the rabbit hole totally, so let's be careful. But post-COVID, people feel cheated by COVID on all kinds of levels. And the way, whether you're talking about parties, whether you believe in the injections, the vaccination, etc. But people feel that they were conned to a certain extent. And this has fueled, I think, the dissatisfaction that you're talking about. I've been in talk radio for 30 years, and I've never heard people talking like they're talking now. I mean, they don't call it revolution, but they've got no confidence in any of the political parties. The red wall is going to collapse completely. Absolutely. And there was a brilliant program on Friday on GB News in the afternoon where Martin, whatever his name is, I know him really well, I forgot his name, but he went to Sunderland. And there were ex-Labour voters through and through, white, working class Labour guys. They're not going to vote for them. At the moment, they're all clinging to the hope that Nigel Farage is the future. But then now that's beginning to turn as well, because he's made this ridiculous comment about men in frocks. They can go in prisons, women's prisons. And that's just only one of the things. There's the Tommy Robinson influence. I don't think Tommy's got the answers either, but you can't ignore him. But it does seem as if right across the political spectrum, maybe apart from Farage, they don't know it's coming. They can't.
No, they don't seem to.
And the water's gone out. Like in a tsunami, the water's gone out, and they've said, "Oh, that's nice. We can have a paddle. We get a suntan." They don't realise that any minute now it's going to come back. And
they don't. They seem to be completely out of touch. And let's just make this very clear. Revolution, and I've experienced revolutions in countries, are a terrible thing. They lead to, they become murder machines. Okay. And it is absolutely terrible, terrifying that through political inaction, through political failure, Britain is now on the brink, perhaps not of revolution, but of certainly of major issues and public disorders on a scale.
Certainly economic collapse. Economic
collapse is very, very real.
And the riots around the corner. Even Starmer said riots are coming this summer, and then he's buggered off to Tuscany or wherever he's going on holiday. Surely,
that's another thing.
Surely, Parliament should be recalled at the moment. We are in a crisis.
You've got all these. It always amazes me how you've got all these socialists who seem to go off on very nice holidays and accrue millions and millions and millions of pounds by one means or another, rather suspiciously sometimes. And yet they still preach their everyman creed or whatever it is. And in the meantime, the British people, this is a very interesting point. I think the British people naturally tend to be centre-right. We're traditionalists, we're a little bit conservative, we're socialist on some things, we're socialist on the NHS, probably on education, but generally we tend a little bit to the right. We don't tend to the far right. In fact, we don't really like the far right.
No, we don't.
But what's happening now, because big government is not listening to people, it means that extremists can come in and they can provoke problems. They can come into situations where they see energy and use it to their advantage. And that does worry me, particularly when we're bringing the vote in for 16-year-olds, all these other things that we've mentioned.
So let's talk about Southport for a moment. Again, the anniversary of that dreadful atrocity. Starmer knew the day Starmer went and laid that wreath. And the moment she heard that first woman, again, pardon the language, but it's factual, she shouted wanker, or one of them shouted wanker. I think she shouted, how many more children, Mr. Starmer? He hot-footed it out of there. And I never realised just how much he ran until I saw the Channel 4 excellent documentary a week or two ago, where it was all the clips of ordinary people using their mobile phones. That Range Rover, it drove away at top speed as if he thought, or his security people thought, he was about to be killed, right? Why couldn't he go? Why couldn't he even do a Tony Blair? Go over to that big, fat, white, working class woman and say, what can I do to help? Or I'm your prime minister. I'm going to sort this out. Because that's what Blair would have done. Because she actually said, how many more? She said, my friend's daughter was murdered, right? That's what the emotion was. What he did was he ran away, and then a few days later, or a day, I can't remember the exact timeline, he then calls every single one of those white working class people a far-right thugs. He caused the riots. That's a controversial view for you.
Yeah, I think one of the problems that Starmer's got, whatever you might say of Tony Blair, and he's not the most popular man in the country, he does have charisma, and he is very bright.
Yes.
You do not get the impression that Mr. Starmer has much charisma. He certainly doesn't seem to have much natural leadership ability, in my opinion. I don't think you'd get the guys going after, come on, boys, follow me over the top of the trench. He's not that sort of guy. He is a bit of a boring bureaucrat in the way he's presented. It sort of also irritates me when I see him talking to us with two Union Jacks behind him. That seems to me an inappropriate thing. But the Tory,
why? He's the leader of Great Britain. Why does the flag offend you, or him using
the flag? Doesn't offend me at all. But using the flag and emphasizing the flag in the way that Boris, I think, did as well.
Yeah,
I just think it's inappropriate. They're trying to use it to their benefit. They're not honoring it. They're trying to give a false impression, maybe, to the public of their patriotism. We want to see patriotism, which is about listening to ordinary people, that is honoring our tradition of democracy and free speech. We're seeing free speech closed down all the time at the moment. That's not patriotic. That's got nothing to do with the Union Jack.
I'm glad you brought that up. Let's talk then about this Online Safety Act. Many people are saying they've only brought that in not to protect children from looking at vile porn, because they'll see it anyway. It's to stop any criticism of the government, and it seems to be coming true. I've just told you about the London mayor. He's put out a directive that you've got to be very careful what you say on social media. What the fuck what's it got to do with him? Just like with Starmer, they're going to use this to quash free speech. It's happening. I mean, I don't know where you stand on Lucy Connolly. What she wrote in the midst of those riots was atrocious, abysmal. I hated it. But she did take it straight down about 3 or 4 hours later. I don't think it incited people. I think what incited people was Starmer and his indifference to the suffering of the people of Southport. And then I think she apologised. She shouldn't have had to go to prison for 31 months. She is a political prisoner. And even though I don't agree with most of what Tommy says, he's being used in a similar way. Am I right? Am I wrong? Am I?
No, I think there's a lot of truth in what you say. We don't have a First Amendment like they have in the States.
Yes.
We do not have true free speech. Our free speech has always been bounded, which is not necessarily a bad thing, with things like libel laws and, criminal acts of one sort or another. And I think that's probably a good thing. But I think we've gone far too far now. It seems that free speech in Britain really is being controlled. You're not free to say things online is clearly obvious. And it's not just about the subjects you mentioned. I mean, I'm not going to go into it in detail. I was very badly injured by the vaccine. I got a thrombosis. And when I started talking about that online, my account started to get censored. And I did eventually get an apology out of the platform. But the account never quite recovered from that. But there are quite a lot of subjects now where they have algorithmic systems which will pick up what you're saying, and they will mute your account to a greater or lesser extent.
I'll tell you, let me just add this into this. It's fascinating, this. What do you call it? Chat GPT. I sometimes use that to make my little avatars that are going to go on to illustrate the the videos I'm making. But if you ask it to, I don't know, Sir Keir Starmer dressed in a nappy, Sir Keir Starmer drowning in the sea, but then even anything now, so it started off them saying, no, we won't make that. That's against our guidelines. But now you only have to mention them. I did the program about the BBC yesterday, and I wanted it to make me a picture of BBC Broadcasting House or a BBC building, the BBC logo, and then license fee. Is the license fee still justified? It tried this. I'm chatting. I'm getting really angry. I'm chatting to the bot, yeah, and he keeps saying no. Our guidelines won't allow that. What the effing hell is going on, Mike? If I was saying, Keir Starmer is a paedophile, I could understand that. But if I'm saying I want to criticise an institution, for God's sake, the BBC, which I have to pay for, or I go to prison, I'm not allowed to do it anymore. And I think that's all post-COVID. And that's why I have got a lot of sympathy for what you're saying, even though we are on slightly different paths there. It seems as if the censorship is everywhere. So you want to, and growing. And it's also, I think that these companies, these big tech companies, are worried now about what might happen. I mean, Elon Musk doesn't care because he's so incredibly rich. And I think the big tech companies in America, and I hope J.D. Vance is going to be our savior on all this, because they certainly think we're losing free speech.
Yeah,
but
he said some very sensible things.
Yeah, but I just want to tell people, if that's happening on Chat GPT, where they're kind of banning you making any critical avatars, I mean...
By the way, if you ask AI, I have interesting conversations with Grok about how much censorship there is in Britain, and whether this is coming from some central source or it's domestic. You will get some absolutely fascinating answers. And I recommend anyone who is interested in these subjects to actually ask artificial intelligence about censorship and online and how it is impacting us at the moment. You'll get some surprising answers from that. Here's a practical test. I'm a working writer. I've been a working writer ever since I left the army, which is a long time ago now. So I've made my living with my pen and my camera. And in some other unusual ways as well, making the odd film. But I am now not free to write what I think. When I go online, when I've got 80,000 odd people that follow me on Twitter, I have to think before posting, because you could make a mistake now that either would get your account closed down or that might get you into very deep hot water. Now, I don't have unreasonable opinions. I'm not a hateful person. I don't have extreme politics. I am very, very critical of our government, of the BBC, of generally the way people in our society have been poorly treated by the system. I'm very, very, very critical of big corporations and the way they've fleeced people and continue to fleece people and seem to have enormous lobbying power in Parliament. In fact, Parliament no longer looks like our Parliament. It looks captured either by big corporations, by the
big pharma, etc.
All of this. And this is all part of the problem, because it means the individual person, the ordinary person, is increasingly impotent in this dystopia that they're building. I mean, just try phoning up a call center for whatever problem you might have. Generally speaking, the point is they don't want to talk to you. They don't
want to help you. No, you're right.
They want your money. They want the direct debit to keep paying them whatever it is. And they're going to make it as difficult as possible to get through to a human being to actually solve the problem, because it's better for them that you don't and that you just keep on paying. That sort of stuff is driving people absolutely nuts. So the whole direction that our society is going in is not really helping the individual. It's not really working for the benefits of the individual system. It's working either for the benefits of big corporations or for these sort of faceless them, the World Economic Forum, and whatever else there is that's similar, but not us.
But I keep coming back to that. But who are them? Who is this? Who is doing this? Who's controlling us in this way? It's not really Starmer, is it? It's not.
No, yet Starmer and Reeves, do you remember when they trekked off to Davos before the election?
He said he'd prefer to be at Davos than in Westminster.
Yeah. And it was as if he was having to get the stamp of approval of WEF and all of it represents before he could come back to the British electorate. But you've asked a very good question. Who are them?
Yeah.
And I don't think it's a load of guys in a dark chamber wearing black hoods.
It's not a James Bond movie.
No, it's not.
No.
But what are we actually facing? It could just be a manifestation of big money. These huge organizations like BlackRock and Vanguard,
Yeah.
and the sort of social pressure and political pressure they can put on a society because they think it's going to be to their economic benefit. All the the social stuff that's trendy, all the woke stuff, the big companies see as being to their economic advantage when you actually look at the numbers of it. It's not just because, they're doing it because they're good liberals. They're doing it because they think they're going to make money from it, more money from it.
What can we're going to wrap in a moment, but I do want to ask you about riots in a second. But what can we as individuals or neighborhoods or communities or families do? Because I've a bit like you, I've been out in the wilderness. It's interesting to talk about call centers for a short period leading up to Christmas, not this one, the one before. I got a job in a call center for a major wine company. I'm not going to say who it is, but they didn't employ me. I was employed by some service company. My wages were sorted out in Slovakia or somewhere by another company. So it was all companies and companies and companies. And my job was, people used to ring up and go, I haven't got my effing wine. Where's my wine? Or you sent the wrong one. My job wasn't to sort it out, really. My job was just to make them still pay the next month's installment or whatever, or fob them off with another bottle of wine. It's exactly what you just said. And I had people next to me, and I'm not having a go at them, who couldn't speak English. They certainly couldn't write English. So they say, Mr. John, literally, this is Mr. John in Stratford-upon-Avon. Does this sound okay, what I've written? And most of it was on templates anyway. And I'd say, well, no, it doesn't really. That's not really English. Here, I'll improve it for you. So I'd do it for them. And then I was there with my mate, and he's just a normal, ordinary guy, not in the media. He said, this is all deliberate, isn't it? He said, because if they employed people like you, John, and me, there would be no need for a call centre after about a week because we'd have solved it all and sorted out the problems. They want to go back to the wine company, whose name I'm not mentioning, and say, we need more workers because they're getting paid X amount per head. And then we sat there fantasizing about this because I'm sitting there doing wine. Guy next to me is doing pressure washers and high-tech tools. Another guy over the other side is doing a major posh supermarket. It's all being run like this. It's all being run.
And at a distance, keeping us at arm's length.
Yeah.
So the other thing I would say is, if you ever talk to people in those call centers, here's a tip, because I deal with them a lot, and I often manage to break through. Be kind to the people on the other end of the phone. It's not,
because most people aren't. They're just horrible.
They're all angry, and it's not their fault. The person who you're talking to can perhaps solve your problem a bit anyway. So be nice to them. But reach out. I think part of the issue, you say, what can we do? It's a very good question. What can we do? I talk to everybody. I think about this stuff. I research it. I promote people becoming more aware of the situation, because I think as more and more people become aware and maybe dissatisfied about what's going on, that will generate an energy which will lead to reforming change, which is what we want. We don't want people screaming. We don't want people being violent and foolish. We don't want that. But we do want people to be aware and interested, and not just ignoring it all and pretending it's all going to go away, because it won't. And in a democracy, it is up to us, we the people. We have a responsibility ourselves to take an interest in these things, to develop opinions, to do all the stuff that every single person can do. Because I get loads and loads of people coming up onto my social media saying, oh, well, we should go and do this or that. And there's a lot of idiots who come up with violent stuff as well. That's not the answer. Awareness is the answer. When awareness gets to a certain point, things will and do change. And people are really unhappy now. And some of them are just beginning to explore this stuff. So let's encourage more of that. Reach out to people locally. Talk to people. help people locally. I do my best to get involved in the community a bit and deal with social problems. That's all great stuff. Do more of that. Don't just be isolated. Don't be a bubble. Don't just be staring at computer
that's
screens.
what they want. That's why they're
Yes.
the attack. It's a whole program on its own. But the attack on the hospitality industry and pubs, they don't want us to mix. They don't want us to communicate. You're right.
The
Just
death of the
before
pub
you go
is
then,
tragic.
yeah, I want to go on to riots in a moment. Just very quickly, Farage, is he the answer?
Well, you know, I talk to Nigel sometimes, and Nigel is a very, very bright bloke.
Yes.
And he is
Brilliant
a
communicator.
Brilliant communicator and journalist. You're staggeringly talented.
Yeah.
As I might add, a political opponent, as is or was Blair.
Yeah.
Is Nigel the answer? Well, a change, I think, wouldn't do the country any harm at all. Whether or not he'd win the next election, I think he's a little bit optimistic. I think he might do very well. I think he might gain a lot of seats. But I also think that this is the problem you have with extremes. I think he's correct to have sort of pushed for reform away from the extremes. I think that is sensible.
Yeah.
He's also got to, the big problem he has also is attracting young people.
Yeah.
You know, I think most reform supporters tend to be middle-aged white people, bluntly. Not all, but most. And so he's got to broaden the base of reform if it's going to work. He does say a lot of sensible things. There's some things I disagree with him about, but he does say a lot of sensible things. And at least he seems in touch with people.
Yeah.
Starmer does not seem to be in touch with people at all.
No.
So yeah, that is a great positive for Nigel. But I think he must be very careful of how he develops that party, and it must have as broad a base as possible. I think he is exploring that now. I mean, he's a sensible guy, and he is a great communicator. Am I, have I signed up for reform personally? No, not yet. But I do think we need change. And of course, that is a very good point about our political system. You don't always need to agree with everything, but sometimes you may think that the country does need a change. You don't have to agree with everything someone else says. It's not my way or the highway. We don't have to all be in these tribes. I think that's a deeply unhealthy trend at the moment. You can respect other people's points of view, and you can say, yeah, actually, let's have a conversation. We've got a lot of common ground here.
Let's leave that there for a moment. And I just finally want to ask you this, and we're going to be very short because we've gone well over our time. Talk to me about, is Britain going to burn? Are we going to have riots?
Do you know, Britain is intrinsically sensible. Yeah, there'll probably be some disturbance. Rain is the best policeman. And so when you get hot weather, that's when you get trouble on the streets. And also you have to recognize today that there are people who try and talk up that trouble, agents provocateurs or whatever. Yeah. And that is really, really bad news. What you have got to have, though, is an ability for ordinary people who have real issues to be allowed to express those issues without fear of retribution from the state. Yeah. And also, for that matter, without fear of interference from outsiders who are trying to use it for their own political purpose. But it does seem that we're losing that balance in Britain, and that people are not really able to say what they think. And if you don't let them say what you think, then you're tightening down the lid on the pressure cooker, and you make trouble, you make riots or whatever it may be, far more likely than, in my opinion, than if you just let people talk.
Great talking to you, Mike. Thank you very much indeed. Stay there. I'll come back to you in a moment. That's Mike Yardley, terrorism and security expert. I'd forgotten how much I liked tangling with him and discussing things with him. It's great to be doing that again. I hope you found it interesting. I thought that was a fascinating program. Don't forget, I do a live show every Monday to Thursday at 6:30. Try and join in there if you can. Don't forget also my Twitter and my Facebook. They're all Jon Gaunt. And my TV channel, my YouTube channel, Jon Gaunt TV. Subscribe to it. It's totally free. Then you never miss an episode of anything that I'm up to because you get notified. So press the bell, press the subscribe button. And that's even if you listen. I know a lot of people now listen to the podcast when they're walking the dog, but then watch the TV version of it. That's the modern media world. And no, that's not a real piano behind me. That's called green screen. technology. Superb. I really, really enjoyed that. Hope you did as well. Don't forget as well, you can help me. If you'd like to donate, just press that little button down there, the $sign. You can give a quid, 2 quid, 10 quid, 100 quid, or buy me a coffee. www.buymeacoffee.com/Jon Gaunt. And if you're more of a beer person, you could buy me a beer there instead. That all starts at a $5 a go. All this money helps me to develop the podcasts and stops me selling the big issue outside. Well, I was going to say Woolies, but that's closed down as well. Outside a supermarket going, Scooby-Dooby-Doo, big issue. Until the next time, if you've got kids, give them a kiss, give them a hug. Hey, 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 don't forget to tell them that you love them. And Mike Yardley's right. Talk to people. That's the answer. Thanks.